The Antichrist has made his debut, and we are moving on to the second seal this coming Friday. So keep that in mind. Keep everything in your prayers. Once again, we're headed to revival. What a beautiful service to head into revival with. Amen. So the Lord is on the move, obviously. And while he's on the move, I want to be on the move with him. Amen. I don't want to get behind or lagging or anything like that. I want the Lord to move. And if he's not going to move in you, then let him move in me. Amen. It'd be really cool if he'd move in us all. Amen. Galatians 4:4, but when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law. But when the fullness of time was come. May the Lord add blessings to the reading of his word. And everyone said, amen. It wasn't an accident or just happenstance that Jesus Christ showed up at this particular moment in history as a child, as a baby. But God in his providence had the preparation of the world for the coming of Christ and Christianity. This was God's hour for the greatest event in history. The greatest event in history. You just think of that. The greatest thing that has ever happened in the history of mankind was the arrival of God's Son, Jesus Christ, being born into this world. We've talked about our patriarchs in the beginning, and from Adam and Eve through Noah and his 3 sons, and Abraham and his 3 wives, and their association and has seen in the Gospels and so on, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and then in our last service 2 weeks ago, we talked about the influence of Rome, what Rome's role was in the coming of the Lord. And now this morning we're going to briefly, and I'll try to be brief, we're going to talk about the role that Greece played in the coming of the Lord. So let me just give you a little history of Greece. The first major civilization in the region of Greece goes back as far as 300 BC on the island of Crete in the Aegean Sea. The culture, according to legend, started by a man named Minos, and therefore the whole culture was known as the Minoan, and Minos was the king. The Minoan people ruled the region up until about 1450 BC, when the Mysians took control. They are the ones that won the war against Troy. And, some of you are familiar with these things, but for the sake of time, I don't want to elaborate too much on it. So much in history, folks. I love it. Just smile when as we go through this lesson and encourage me, because it's a blessing to me. It really is. Greek civilization then developed into small city-states. A city-state consisted of a city or town along with the surrounding villages and farmland. Since the city-states were intensely independent, they quarreled with one another, or they quarreled with other city-states, and I mean they were ferocious in their quarrels and whatnot. They battled intensely. Ancient Greek city-states never became united into a nation. However, the common language and cultural interest bound them together. They had that common denominator. Once again, they took great pride in their freedom. The ancient Greeks called themselves Hellenes, and their land was referred to as Hellas. They were so proud of the identity and of their cultural achievements that anyone outside was considered a barbarian. The Grecians were a very, very proud people. If there's ever a place that I'm just not going to get there, but I've always wanted to tour Greece. They have so many artifacts and ruins and coliseums and things like that I'd love to see. But it is what it is. Maybe when we get to heaven, there'll be a thumb drive or something that we can plug in and see how all history unfolded and enjoy it. You just, or maybe there'll be a literal iCloud and it'll be the big screen, and we'll see, but anyway, my mind and imagination, how it gets. I could really go on from there and make you smile. But anyway, it's a place that I've always wanted to visit, been intrigued with it. But let's look at the Greek territory and government. It consisted of a mountain peninsula that jutted into the Mediterranean Sea, other islands, and the west coast of Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey. Each city-state served as a center of trade, religion, and government. There was a fortified hill in each city, called it an Acropolis, for defense. There was an agora in each city, which served as a place for public meetings and so on. Greek civilization began to really develop around 2000 BC. The people of each city-state would develop their own culture and dialect. And that's fascinating when in itself. You get into classical Greek and so on, different types of their own language. That's an interesting study. In 700 BC, citizens were divided into three different classes. 5 to 10% were the wealthy class. 20 to 30% were the middle class. 60 to 70% were the extreme poor. All non-citizens were slaves. Every non-citizen was a slave. Well, what defined Greek culture? Education, music, poetry, arts, writing, philosophy, math, science, sports. I mean, they had it all. Their intellect into that culture, into that breed of individual was astounding. Now keep in mind that God, in his plan, strategically planted all these civilizations and everything just where they would be like chess pieces. And in the fullness of time, all these things would come together and there would be a checkmate. And God's Son, Jesus Christ, would come on the scene. But all of these were contributing, all their movement and all their addition to the plan of God or in the plan of God is very beautiful. Higher education, such as law, medicine, public speaking, and philosophy, was very well known in the Greek culture. In 300 BC, Plato founded a school in Athens, and it became known as the world's first university, and they called it the Academy. The number one university in the world was called the Academy. Plato's prized pupil was Aristotle, and he also, as he developed and grew and expanded, he himself founded other universities. And so this intelligence, that they had, it expanded. And that's what God wanted. That's what God wanted in this culture. Philosophy originated in 500 BC. The word philosophy comes from two Greek words that mean love of wisdom. That's what philosophy means. Love of wisdom. Philosophy investigated the nature of knowledge, in which they sought to define what good and evil would be. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were Greeks' renowned philosophers. Socrates caused people to expose the weakness of their ideas through argument. Now, and I know this may not do anything for you, but it's an interesting study. When years ago I had, for my degree, I had to do a report on psychology, and all these men were a part of it. And so to look into their lives and so on, and the lives of current philosophers, that one film that we watch, God's not dead, where the professor, has Nietzsche and all these guys, you'd be surprised how many people, philosophers on that board that I'd studied about and things like that. But it's really fascinating. If you ever get any time, in this day and hour that we're living, where time is just everywhere, pick up a book on Socrates or Plato or Aristotle and, and amuse yourself. Amen. I'll never forget, years ago, when I was studying, I heard James Dobson one time, and James Dobson, just a classic individual, focused on the family, and wrote so many good books, authored so many. But he had a dog, a wiener dog, I believe it was, a dachshund, and he named it Sigmund. Yeah, after Sigmund Freud, and he called him Siggy for short. But anyway, we should have named our dog Socrates or something. But anyway, Plato explored. I just want to make a funny here. He explored the movement of dough, and played dough. Thank you, honey. Amen. It's her birthday today. But anyway, Plato explored beauty, justice, and government. Aristotle explored science. The philosophies of these men were unchallenged for 1,000 years. And so going unchallenged for 1,000 years enabled their philosophical views to be embedded into the intellect of mankind through their teachings, the universities that they founded, and would give that knowledge or that argument that they had, that philosophy that they had, pass it on to their students and so on. Because of their no boundaries philosophy, they were a people that were highly superstitious. The Grecians are known for that. They killed Socrates for his disrespect of the Grecian gods. Their mathematics and logic catapulted them into the knowledge of the universe and nature. The Greeks pioneered medicine, physics, biology, mathematics. It was Demosthenes who declared that all things come from an atom, the tiny bits of matter that cannot be divided. This was in 400 BC, so it's really nothing new. This was considered the pinnacle of Greek civilization. They called it the Golden Ages. In 200 BC, it was the Greeks, Aristarchus and Sarnos, who said that the earth revolved around the sun. So you can just about imagine how much of the knowledge that we entertain today, where it was founded, where it came from. Their military, they put great emphasis on their military. At age 7, boys were taken to military camps for rigid training and discipline. At age 7, how old are you, Seth? 8? See, you'd already be in military camp if you were back in those days in the time of Greece. At age 7, they would go off to military camp and start being programmed, for military strategies and things like that. Athens and Sparta were considered the greatest cities in the world for achievement. They each had a democratic-like government. Sparta had a tremendous standing military. They were famous for creating the phalanx in military campaigns, and that phalanx was used for over 300 years. It's the wedge, that you use for going against the foe, and the shields and all this, just something that you cannot penetrate, but it was used for over 300 years. Athens was noted for their great navy. There was the Persian Wars by King Darius, who started coming into the city gates and conquering them. The people, the Grecians, revolted against this aggression. King Darius came against the Athens with a great number, and the Athens defeated them. This was known as the Marathon War and regarded as Greece's finest hour. Athens and Sparta, they warred over superiority. A plague struck the Athens, and 1/3 of the people were killed. Therefore, they had to yield to Sparta. Greece fell into discouragement and became a very weak economy. Now, people with, and I got to be careful how I say this, because I'm not an authority on it, but just over observation and what I've read, people of that intellectual caliber are the most prone to fall into discouragement. I've known people like that were really intelligent people that really struggle with discouragements and things like that in life. But here you have a whole culture, a whole country of people that fell into discouragement. And because of that, they became very weak and their economy fell out. Macedonia seen their weakness and sought to take advantage of it and conquered it in 338 BC by King Philip II. Alexander the Great, the son of King Philip, stepped into power at the death of his father and conquered Persia in a brilliant military campaign. Alexander's military spread all over the region, spreading Greek culture and language. After his death, Greece became weak. Rome conquered Macedonia and then Greece, but Rome adapted the infrastructure of the Grecians. The Romans spoke Greek. They adapted everything. So you can see how this net, all the connections that these cultures had, the Romans and the Grecians, and how they just didn't cease to exist, but the Romans were very good at copying other cultures and so on and making it part of them. That's what made Rome really so strong for 1,000 years is when they conquered, they took the things that other countries and cultures were noted for that made them excel, and they brought it into them. They learned from others and brought that into their own Roman culture. Their religion, because of Greece's city-state independence, religion was highly sought out after. They thrived after their many gods and goddesses. Greek gods told them the future in their daily living. I mean, it was just, when I was growing up, there were some, what I called classic programs or movies. They weren't programs, they were movies. But when I was growing up, there was a series of films called Hercules. And Hercules was the son of some Greek gods and so on. And Hercules, when he would, and it was so long ago. I mean, I'm 63, folks. And I'm talking when I was probably Seth's age or something, so 55 years ago, and I can still remember some of these films where the Greek gods would be up in the heavens and they would say, well, let's put Hercules over here. He's like a chess piece. Let's put him over here and let's cause this to happen and so on. But you'd be surprised, I've always believed this, a lot of things that Hollywood does isn't something that's conjured up. It's something that already existed or does exist. And so all these gods that they had, the chief deities lived in Mount Olympus, who was Zeus and his wife Hera. Since sports were highly accepted, religious events always had games. Now, and you probably already knew this, but I always think it's fascinating. Every 4 years, there were the Olympics, which were held in honor of Zeus and his wife. This festival is still accepted and honored to this very day. They just had that in Japan here a couple weeks ago, the Olympics. And it's all under the guise of sports, that its roots are tied to these goddesses or gods in Grecian culture. It still goes on. Lastly, the Grecian language became the seedbed of the gospel. The common language of the Roman Empire was not Latin, but Koine, which means common Greek, which was the language of the people. This provided the early Christian missionaries with an open door to preach in the common language of the people of the empire. Also, the Greek New Testament was written in Koine Greek. This could only be by the working of a divine mind. Only God could orchestrate such a design, such a fabric for the presentation of his son, Jesus Christ. It is said that Hebrew could never become the language of theology as Greek did. A lot of times in seminary and so on, they offer Hebrew and Greek classes and so on, but by far, scholars try to understand Greek over Hebrew because the theology is deeper. There's more perspective and stuff when you see things through the Grecian language. The Christian faith swept the Middle East because it was cast into the Greek mold. God chose a philosophical language to be the bearer of the gospel. Philosophy without truth gives man no hope, but God takes philosophy and logic woven in truth and pierces the intelligence of mankind. So in the fullness of time, God sent forth his son. I mean, everything that, as it unfolded in all these cultures, I mean, it's almost hard to wrap your mind around it because it's a divine work. But only God could do something like that. Take different cultures and manipulate them and bring them into the squeeze chute. Bring them all. I mean, we're talking through thousands of years. Bring them all to a certain place in a certain time where a little baby was born, the Son of God. And then the men that would learn under the tutorage of Jesus Christ would take what those other cultures had developed and were present at that time, could take that and spread the gospel like it was never spread before. Amen. I heard it said when Jesus Christ was crucified, that just like that, it spread all over Europe, all over the Middle East, because of the network of transportation, the roads that the Romans gave, the language that was common, everything just spread like the internet. Amen. And it just went all around the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Amen. Only God could do something like that. And that's what the Greeks contributed to the coming of Jesus Christ. Amen. Let's all stand.